company. The proprietary technology behind this is called nanopulse stimulation. And we're going to talk a lot about that, but really what this is, it's a new non-thermal mechanism of action using electrical energy. It's very, very new to dermatology. It's never been before used in the industry of dermatology, but the energy is not new. It's incredibly well clinically proven. There's a lot of busyness on this history slide, and we won't spend too much time going through all of it, but what I want to touch on is this company was founded in 2015, and in the summer or fall of, or the spring of 2016, we went IPO. And we did a $23 million IPO, and at that time, the company had 0 human clinical research and 0 commercial revenue. And I think you would appreciate, as did I, I can't think of a company that's ever been able to do that. And so the question has become, like, you have no money coming in and you have no human proof, so how did you get a bunch of money? And we had a rat study where they were injecting basal cell carcinoma into rats, letting it grow, treating it with MPS, and we were curing it.
Melanoma.
So, sorry?
With melanoma.
Melanoma cancer, excuse me. So with melanoma, so 6 months later, we would re-inject the rat with melanoma, and it wasn't growing. So we were able to prove not only that there was an adaptive immune response, but there was this immunogenic property around the body now having recognized that viral line, and once it was reintroduced, was no longer able to do what it wanted. That was where we were IPO'd. And so fast forward from there to now, lots of human study, over 1,000 patients now treated with it in a clinical setting across warts, sebaceous hyperplasia, severe keratoses, all with very high clinical outcomes. And so this leads us to where we are this year, fast forwarding through a bunch of this. So today, we still have no commercial revenue, 0. We haven't sold $1. Actually, it's not true. In the US now we have.
Our first.
We did last month, because they're starting already commercially. But we have a bunch of human research, and a lot of the founders within this company are initial founders of CoolSculpting. So Mitch Levinstein was the original CEO. He has been on our board since the beginning. He just actually officially joined the company a week and a half ago as our chief scientific officer. A lot of the people who started CoolSculpting are coming to or at this company now, or have joined the organization. And I share that because, like CoolSculpting at the beginning, they didn't just run to the market and start selling lots of devices. They put into practices, they got feedback, and they really tried to hone the clinical outcomes and the commercial elements of that before they started selling devices. So today, this controlled launch is what we're calling it, but in the United States, there's roughly 40 or so practices. In Europe, there's another 15. And in Canada, there will only be 6 for the next 90 to 120 days. So in the world, there's only about 50 some of these units available right now.
Well, thank you for choosing us to be one of your
all
your study partner in
Yes.
this Jersey
Awards.
Awards. Yeah. Thank you for.
You're so welcome, and all kudos to Christina and Nancy and Bob Tyson, our North American VP. You know, I work in the U.S. Usually. I've worked in Canada for many years, but at this company, I'm supporting Canada while we bring on our new regional director, I think, next month. And she'll be based in Ontario, and you may already know her at some point, but she's wonderful. I think you guys will be in wonderful hands. Great. So that's where we are today. Health Canadian cleared, FDA approved, and EU approved all in the same year within the first 6 months of the year at the same time, which is super strange and great. This is our advisory board. This is more for all the physicians, and I think a lot of these names people know and appreciate. Rox Anderson's the founder of CoolSculpting. I think when we showed him some of the outcomes, there's a few slides of histology that we showed him. The first thing he told us was run, not walk to acne. So we are doing pivotal and optimizational studies on acne currently as well.
I think we were one of the first, I believe, in general, to have the CoolSculpting device. Is that true? In whether it's in Western Canada or Canada as a whole.
Yeah,
We
I
started
started
out
out
with like 2, and you were one of the 2.
Toronto
Yeah.
had one, and we
We always want to try to be on the forefront, and I think with hydrofacial too, we were one of
Yes.
the first to
Yeah.
bring that on, so.
That's right.
Yeah.
I think we're seeing a lot of our practice like Bob Weiss and Dr. Getz and a bunch of other physicians in Maryland where they see the value of being early, and if you can get the outcomes in a controlled environment,
Mhm.
when you do go to commercial, you'll be obviously the first. And you know, our PR agencies have been working closely with our partners around those things. So we'll certainly revisit that conversation, but talk a lot about it. So benign lesions. So where we are today, Health Canadian cleared for warts, sebaceous hyperplasia, seborrheic keratoses, and I like this slide because this is feedback we're getting from advisory board members, clinical research dermatologists. This wasn't just our company putting words in and saying, hey, this is the market opportunity. This is what we heard from practices saying, we have a lot of these warts and lesions to come back. You know, if we're all honest, like we hear it from our doctors and saying, yeah, I do get recurrence on SH and the warts come back all the time and my patients get retreated. And so what we saw was an opportunity within that segment. And the last thing I would say at the bottom is improved outcome opportunity. There really hasn't been a real big improvement in this market in a long time, but more specifically, the market research we showed from patients who get aesthetics, their willingness to have these treated and cleared is actually higher than Botox and other things. It's kind of surprising. And so I can tell you, there will be a gap, there will be, between what you think you can charge and what they will pay. Every doctor I've talked to, it's like this. It's like, we're used to paying like $100 or $200. And we'll have more patients saying, here's my credit card, I don't care. A patient the other day in Denver was like, I'll give you $1,000 and get rid of this off my foot right now. I mean, and not to say that's the answer, but it's to say there's the gap. And so we'll talk more about the market research. All right, so initial applications. Everything in blue on the top is our initial applications for this device. Everything written in light blue is something that is currently going on in a feasibility or an optimization or a pivotal clinical study currently. So things like acne, seringoma. Seringoma is a big one. I think, would you agree?
Yeah, I love something great.
Dermatofibroma is another one that we're having a lot of. If you find dermatos, treat them.
Okay.
We'll
I
get
got
on
one
it.
too.
Perfect.
That's a really tough one. Either you cut it out or you smooth it.
Intradermal nevi,
Yeah, you mentioned that one.
basal cell, cherryangiomas. One of the ones that I've seen success in our region on was white hair, where we treated a nevi that had a white hair growing out of it, and the nevi we just treated with standard, nevi setting, but the white hair has never come back, and the nevi is completely gone.
But it gets to the right depth. I mean, because you need to go down like 4 millimeters to that, or 5 millimeters.
I'm not sure because it was really on the chin. It was
Yeah.
very pronounced. So I don't know, but that's a fair point.
Yeah, I was curious.
Especially in the US, because we do not actually have all of the energy settings and the depths of needles as you do. You in Europe have the full gambit.
Okay.
So we also have deeper depth needles here for some of the larger, more raised.
Okay. Interesting.
Subcutaneous fat, sweat glands, lipomas. So there's a lot of exciting information, a lot of different opportunities in the future. I would also tell you, outside of dermatology, we have an entire department within our organization working on things beyond dermatology as well. Things that would be oncology, cardiology, ophthalmology. So we see there's a lot of opportunity. But it all starts here. So you guys are literally the ground. It's really cool. And your guidance and your feedback is going to be super important for us, especially for Canada. All right, so first and foremost, it's not a laser. It doesn't heat anything. It's not an RF. It doesn't freeze anything. It does nothing thermally. And we'll show you some slides from some pretty prominent dermatologists who didn't believe us, so they did their own thermal imaging right after treatment to prove it. So again, when you talk to a patient, you have to think about a way of saying it's new but not new, because you don't want to scare them. But it's also to say it's a newer energy that's never been used in derm. But this energy was initially started in research in 2003. So it's been researched a very long time. And some of the original founders of all of the patents for this, there was 2 universities and 1 company. They all came together, harmonized globally all of the patents for this, and it's under this company. So this technology is completely protected and very safely well documented. Here's a bunch of studies. It says 694, it's closer to like 1,000 now. And these are some of the initial indication clearances we saw from our clinical research. So sebaceous, we had a 99.6% clearance of sebaceous hyperplasia, which is great. But we also had, I think it was 38% was mild to moderate hyperpigmentation. So, mild to moderate patients will tolerate, but as a company, for example, we started to, what if we reduce energy settings and still get clinical outcomes and reduce that? So we learned a lot about that through our control launch, where you'll see with sebaceous hyperplasia, I think usually it's 115 millijoules in our clinical study to treat it. We've been using 60 millijoules to treat them and treat them very effectively. Warts up to 80%, and almost half of those were recalcitrant or warts that just kept coming back. And severity was 82%. So these are pretty high marks in these particular lesions. With warts, again, I think the American Academy of Dermatology on their own website says things like, there is no cure for warts, which I think is interesting. And I think just in America alone last year, I think over 22 million people suffered from them. So if we're able to offer a solution that's long-term and gets rid of them.
I was gonna ask, do we have a work patient for today?
Yes.
Oh,
Dr. Smith has
I
a
was
few
just gonna
patients
ask.
this morning.
I was gonna ask, we just
Yeah.
asked somebody.
I already asked her that last week.
Okay.
Yeah,
So I'm going to go through a couple more slides and then we'll start treating you.
okay.
Because I think most of it we can show with the device together, biology. But this is probably one of the most important slides because this talks about what it does. Okay, so it's kind of a cool looking picture. Let me explain it. So on the left is a cell right in your body that normally would have, your positive electric, positive negative electrons, and then opposing an electronic field upon it. And what's going to happen within 1 microsecond once an electrical field has hit your cell is the cell's going to try to fix itself and put its ions where they want them again. It takes about a millisecond. So what makes MPS pretty unique is that it operates in a billionth of a pulse second. It's incredibly high amplitude and very powerful. It's enough electrical energy, I think according to our head R&D gentleman, to effectively charge and run roughly 7 electric cars. It's like 5,000 volts. So it's very strong. But as you know with like your Pico, it's on and then it's off for 31 years, and then it's on and then it's off for 31 years, very fast. So we're able to hit the cell, and it pokes these little holes in the cell. It also goes inside the cell into what's called the organelle, which is, for back blood word, the brain of the cell. Then that you have your endoplasmic reticulum, Golgi apparatus, etc. And we're poking holes in that as well, the organelle. And when we do that, we're flooding the cell with calcium. So there's these calcium ions that sit outside in our body, roughly 10,000 times the amount of calcium that's inside our cells. So when you flood it, before it can heal itself, it stresses the cell out enough where it contacts your immune system and says, I have to die, and I have to just go away. This is called regulated cell death, and this happens every single day in our bodies. Think of your skin. You're turning over cellular skin. This is the same idea. So as a device, we're not treating to death anything. All we are doing is creating an environment for the cell of the lesion to do that job naturally on its own. So if you think about that in the future for 1 second, and you think about oncology and cancer,
Yes, I was just going to ask that.
and you think about a very nasty tumor or cancer that's wrapped around something and cutting it out is bad, and if I take the wrong thing, if you treat the brain and you kill the cell, that all goes away.
Is this being sort of studied right now within the company?
Not sort of.
No, it is.
Sort of.
It's big.
Yeah, in fact, when we first got started, that's why we were funded on the melanoma study, because the first initial idea was go straight to cancer. That takes a little time.
Yeah.
And so as they looked at it within the derm community, they started to see these opportunities. So this is a place to start while all of that's being worked on. Yeah. And there's some really cool, exciting things that we're working on. Vocal cords, pancreatic and liver and
Lung.
all sorts of things. Lung. And the lung one was great.
Yeah, imagine not having to cut it, and just
It's-
zap it essentially.
We're on the threshold of something.
It's taking the energy and finding a delivery method, to your point. Like, for example, with Serengoma, we can't treat within the orbital rim right now, because we need to find a way to pull the skin off of the orbital rim for safety. And so they're actually creating a delivery mechanism to do that, so that you can just go in there and get them.
Suction
The
energy.
tip will pull the tissue away so that.
So this right here, you guys, is in a melanoma cell. This is a single pulse of nanopulse of the cell effects. And so you'll see the cells sort of light up green. That green is from a dye that's showing you all of the calcium going into the cell. And so again, this is just kind of showing, this is going to trigger that cascade of events. And so this was a very important slide as well, just to show that what we're doing is actually happening. And then this is showing what happens after a few minutes. So this is a pre-treatment. The secondary one is after 5 minutes, you start to see things swelling and going away within 5 minutes. It's very fast. And then in 30 minutes, you'll see much more swelling, and in 2 hours, you're starting to see things breaking apart. And then if you look at this within a longer period, this is a pre-treatment of the liver tumor, and then 2 hours post, where you're starting to see what we call eat me enzymes, essentially. CAPS3 and CAPS9 enzymes that are being released and going to do their work. And then over here, you're seeing an actual cell, and then after 10 pulses, 20 and 60 pulses of NPS, you're starting to notice that the nucleus is actually separating.
And there's DNA fragmentation.
Yeah, not gonna survive that.
No.
And then within 1 day and 7 days, by day 1, we would call what's called a ghost cell, or a cell that's no longer viable. And then by day 7, you're starting to see under a crusting, so think of like a scab. Some patients will scab more than others, but you'll see some crusting and a scabbing of the lesion treated, and underneath is healthy new fresh skin. And then lastly, this is a cool slide. So these gray lines indicate the microneedles going into the area. This is a sebaceous gland, just like this one. And we like to show this because we treated the sebaceous gland was destroyed. 30 days later, it's not there. But more specifically, we're showing not that it's destroyed, that everything else around it is pretty much preserved and left alone. So it's very specific to the lesion that you're treating. So we will talk about that today with warts, how to treat it. You guys have a three-row microneedle here in Canada, which is great. So you're able to run a line of microneedles within the lesion and 2 kind of around it. The goal being is you want to kind of be just on that margin. And then obviously with other lesions, we'll show you some of those tricks. This reinforces the fact that we're really pretty safely treating what we want, but preserving the acellular structures we don't want to treat.
So, where the needle is, what sort of a margin would you say, like, there's really not much, like, it goes right to the kind of where the needle is? How far?
When the microneedles come down,
Yeah.
whether it's 2 or 3 rows of energy, they just go, instead of it going to the tip and across like some RFs, this will just go like this.
Okay.
So it's almost like you're creating a 3-dimensional box. And as far as it dissipating from a resignation perspective, it's not more than a millimeter or so. It's pretty nominal, but it's the same. I would have to give you an exact number, but it's pretty minimal.
Okay, just curious.
So what happens with the top of the sebaceous? So you go over top of it, you poke some holes into it,
Yeah.
you kill what's underneath the skin. How do you get it to be flattened on the top of the skin? The whole cell will just eventually
Yeah.
be macrophaged up and taken away?
Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah, the entire lesion.
But no
Full
blood,
result.
no nothing.
Yeah, let's talk about that. So there are no goggles, no eyewear for this. There is no plume. So for warts, you don't have to worry about that.
And there's no bright light.
So does it like collapse then? So if you're putting it on something quite elevated, because
Yeah.
some of your slides were
Yeah.
quite, the sectors were quite crusty and elevated.
Yeah.
When you're putting it on there, does it just sort of involute?
Yeah, so the pressure, to your point, will be applied, and when you administer the actual energy, push a little harder than you think. The device will do what's called an APC test. When it has contact to the skin, when you press the trigger, before it actually delivers, it'll do kind of a 2 or 3 second beep to let you know there's good contact, and then deliver. If there's bad contact, it actually shuts itself off. So you really can't get into too much trouble.
Right.
If you hear snapping, which it sounds like sometimes the laser snapping, if you're not great contact, you could get scared, whoa.
Yeah.
You
It
tap
sounds
the
like it's
button,
arcing.
just leave it,
Right.
tap the button, it'll stop the procedure where it is, and then we can assess what to do. Maybe it's more contact gel or it's better pressure. And as you re-administer the trigger, it'll continue the treatment where it was. So you never have to restart and worry.
Right, or worry, are you double treating?
Exactly.
Right.
But now there may be some lesions that you'll want to pare down, so if you have a raised wart, it will be hard to get proper contact.
Right.
So in clinical trials, what they have found is the best course of action is to pare it right down to the base, and then treat.
Depending on the size of the wart, no question, 100%. We want to get through some of that dead necrotic tissue and get into the viable wart tissue. And so if we do have to shave it, do a quick blast and we can rock on it. And then frankly, we can determine the size of these tips. You guys, so many tips, it's amazing.
Well, there's 15 options in Canada to,
Yeah, there's 5 sizes and,
Yeah.
and 3 depths.
Okay.
Can I note something? I went through the papers after the crate came, took them all out, and
Yeah.
it said hand or white glove service.
Oh.
That I believe your company paid for, but it wasn't.
Somebody took it apart.
The crate, it was just left here
Service.
and
Oh.
like left for us to figure
Yeah.
things out. But
Yeah.
I just don't want your company to have to pay for that when it's not, if it's not actually.
This was the first time we've heard of a crate being left. Ever.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because
It was
Talked about-
supposed to be
He has
taken
an
away.
explanation.
Yeah.
Oh, tell me.
Our understanding from the delivery company was someone here instructed them to leave it. And if
That
that's
is what they
inaccurate,
told us.
that's good to know as well. But that's why they did not take it. My understanding is they're
Oh.
coming Wednesday at 9 a.m. to grab it.
Oh.
I can imagine Letitia going, leave it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Maybe
so
what
the body was supposed to take
Don't
the
take that, see that.
console out of the
Don't
box.
touch it.
I was there with her and
Okay,
he
so
said,
that's
Did
not.
he say
well, he said, where do I put this? Where do I put this? And I said, oh, let's
Yeah.
put it over here. And so
Okay,
Letitia
that's
directed
really
him.
good to know.
But if they thought they were supposed to unpack it, then, they should let us know. But we were trying to find a place because we have patients, or
Okay.
are they gonna put it here?
Yeah.
I just want to, and we're completely fine with doing it. It was actually fun. I took some nice
Yeah,
photos
it was a group.
of it.
It was a group.
But I just didn't want your company to have to pay for it.
Yeah. Mine have collapsed on me, but that's a minor.
Yes, I have, yeah, and I'm going to send them to you. You'll
Yeah,
get
I
one
will.
that
Hold on.
day.
You're good.
Yeah.
So if you're doing a presentation, I just have a couple of very minor questions. So one is,
Yeah.
do any of the physicians in Canada ever bill medically bill their, say for us it's AHS, or bill for any of the procedures from this, or is it all private?
Yeah, so, no, great question. So you're the second practice in Canada. I think we're doing a number of them this week for installation for Canada. But you're number
Okay.
2.
Okay.
So I think Dr. Sapra.
Dr. Sapra's the first.
Is he doing that? I don't know.
Not that I'm aware of, but I can certainly find out.
I can share with you that a number of practices in the States for maybe the first 15 to 20 patients, they don't charge because they're just learning it. So what we'd always say is low risk, high gain patient.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
Yeah.
you,
Okay.
as an example. But really just saying like getting comfortable, seeing the clearances, we'll talk to you today with you about when to come back. And so I think with this program, we would like to be here and literally be here with you. If you're doing cases in 30 days, 60 days, it's what we've seen as a nice flow. If you want to treat when we're out here, go nuts. Go ahead. But for example, we get a picture before you can treat it today. And in 30 days, we can take another one. I also have, our company gave us these little handheld dermatoscopes. So we can actually put this on your skin and say, Dr. Matsu, did you say that that's